Arthur Morgan, the hero who couldn't be saved. Arthur Morgan's downfall is the emotional core of Red Dead Redemption 2 and perhaps one of the most memorable character arcs in gaming history. At the beginning of the game, Arthur is Dutch's most trusted right-hand man, a loyal soldier who believes deeply in Dutch's vision of freedom and family. He sees Dutch as a father figure and has built his entire life around the gang, believing they can create a future where they live free from the law and societal control. However, everything changes early in the story when Arthur contracts tuberculosis during what seems like an ordinary debt collection mission. He is sent to collect money from Thomas Downs, a poor farmer who is visibly sick and coughing blood. During the confrontation, Downs coughs on Arthur, unknowingly infecting him with the disease that will eventually kill him. This seemingly small moment seals Arthur's fate and casts a dark shadow over the rest of the game. As Arthur's health begins to deteriorate, he slowly realizes that Dutch's dream is built on lies and empty promises. While Dutch becomes more paranoid and reckless, Arthur begins to reflect on his own life and choices. He starts to see the damage they've done to innocent people and begins to question everything he once believed in. His relationship with Dutch becomes strained, especially when Dutch begins to side with Micha Bell, a newcomer whose loyalty is false. By the later chapters, Arthur's main focus is no longer on Dutch's plan, but on saving John, Abigail, and Jack, giving them a chance at the normal life he knows he'll never have. Arthur's death depends on the player's choices and honor level, making it even more personal. With high honor, Arthur redeems himself in his final moments. After helping John escape, he collapses on a mountaintop and dies peacefully while watching the sunrise. Finally at peace after a life of violence and regret. With low honor, however, Micha brutally kills him, leaving Arthur's last moments filled with anger and suffering. Regardless of the outcome, Arthur's death is inevitable, and nothing the player does can save him. This makes his downfall especially powerful, a man who spends his last days trying to undo the harm he caused, only to die knowing his redemption came too late. Arthur's tragedy represents the death of the Old West itself, as progress, law, and greed destroy the last remnants of freedom and rebellion. 2. Dutch van der Linde, the leader who lost his way. Dutch van der Linde's downfall is one of the most fascinating and tragic parts of Red Dead Redemption 2. At the start of the story, Dutch is a charismatic leader and visionary who inspires absolute loyalty in his gang. He believes in a dream of freedom, a life outside the control of governments and corporations, and has convinced his followers that he can lead them to a better future. Dutch presents himself as a man of principles, often quoting philosophy and speaking about loyalty, love, and family. To the gang, he is more than just a leader. He is a father figure, a symbol of hope in a world that is rapidly changing. However, after the botched Blackwater heist, Dutch's confidence begins to crack. The gang is forced to flee into the snowy mountains, and from that point on, Dutch's decisions become increasingly reckless. Instead of carefully planning, he begins to take bigger and riskier jobs, such as repeatedly robbing the powerful industrialist Leviticus Cornwall, even after it brings immense heat from law enforcement. He also starts to trust the wrong people, like Angelo Bronte in St. Denis and the rebels on the island of Guarma. Each time, these alliances backfire, costing the gang lives and resources. As Hosea's voice of reason fades, Dutch's paranoia grows. He becomes convinced that anyone who questions him is a traitor, even Arthur and John, his most loyal friends. This paranoia is fueled by Micha Bell, who whispers in Dutch's ear and manipulates him into turning against the others. By the later chapters, Dutch is a shadow of his former self, obsessed with control, delusional about the gang's chances, and completely disconnected from reality. Dutch's downfall is complete when he sides with Micha over Arthur and John, betraying the very people who gave everything for him. In the final confrontation, Arthur begs Dutch to see Micha for who he really is, but Dutch walks away, leaving Arthur to die. By the end of the game, Dutch has lost everything: his gang, his family, his ideals, and even his sanity. In Red Dead Redemption 1, we see what remains of him: a bitter, isolated man, hunted by the government and clinging to a dream that never existed. Dutch's fall is not sudden. It is a slow decay, showing how power and pride can corrupt even the most inspiring leader. Number 3. Hosea Mathews, the gang's heart silenced. Hosea Mathews is Dutch's oldest and closest friend, as well as the gang's moral compass. Unlike many of the others, Hosea is not obsessed with wealth or violence. He is a thoughtful, calm figure who genuinely cares about the gang's future and well-being. Throughout the early chapters, Hosea is the one constantly trying to reason with Dutch, urging him to avoid unnecessary violence and focus on long-term plans that could allow them to escape peacefully. He dreams of a quiet life where they can all live free from the chaos of the outlaw world. Unfortunately, Hosea's dreams are destroyed during the St. Denis bank heist, one of the most pivotal moments in the game. The heist quickly goes wrong, and Hosea is captured by the Pinkertons. In front of the entire gang, Agent Milton executes him without mercy, using Hosea's death to send a clear message: the law is closing in, and there will be no escape. Hosea's execution is brutal and deeply personal, not only because of the way he dies, but because of what he represents. Hosea's death marks the point of no return for Dutch and the gang. With Hosea gone, Dutch completely loses his last tether to reason. Before this, Dutch could sometimes be persuaded to make sensible choices, but Hosea's presence was the key to keeping Dutch balanced. Without him, Dutch's paranoia and ego spiral out of control. The gang's collapse accelerates rapidly after this moment, as Dutch becomes violent and unpredictable. Hosea's downfall is heartbreaking because he is one of the few genuinely good men in the gang, someone who wanted peace and believed in Dutch's vision for noble reasons. His death symbolizes the loss of hope and the beginning of the end. 4. Micha Bell, the snake in the grass. Micha Bell's downfall is very different from the others because it is delayed until the very end of the game. While many characters fall victim to Dutch's failing leadership or outside forces, Micha thrives on chaos. From the moment he joins the gang, Micha is secretly working with the Pinkertons, feeding them information and setting up the gang for failure. He plays the role of loyal follower perfectly, whispering in Dutch's ear, flattering him, and slowly replacing Arthur as Dutch's right-hand man. Micha is directly responsible for many of the gang's worst moments. He convinces Dutch to take reckless risks, fuels Dutch's paranoia, and spreads lies about Arthur and John to turn Dutch against them. As a result, Dutch begins to mistrust his oldest friends and lean more heavily on Micha's manipulative advice. By the end of the game, Micha has nearly full control over Dutch, steering him into decisions that destroy the gang completely. After Arthur's death, Micha escapes and thrives in the chaos he created. By the time of the epilogue, he has formed his own gang and amassed a fortune, while the Linde gang is nothing but a memory. However, Micha's betrayal finally catches up to him when John tracks him down to his hideout. In a final confrontation, Dutch appears, and after years of manipulation, Dutch finally sees Micha for what he truly is. Together, Dutch and John kill Micha, bringing his reign of treachery to an end. Micha's downfall is satisfying, but it comes far too late, as his betrayal has already caused the deaths of Arthur, Hosea, Lenny, Sean, and many others. His character represents the rot at the core of Dutch's dream, proof that the gang was doomed from within. Number 5. John Marston, a man trapped by his past. John Marston's downfall is a long and tragic one that spans across both RDR2 and RDR1. In RDR2, John is a man torn between two worlds. He desperately wants to leave the outlaw life behind and build a safe, stable future for Abigail and their son, Jack. However, Dutch constantly undermines him, calling him unreliable, weak, and ungrateful. This treatment drives a wedge between John and Dutch, as Dutch increasingly favors Micha over John. As the story progresses, Arthur recognizes John's desire for redemption and begins to help him. In the final chapters, Arthur sacrifices himself to give John and his family a chance to escape the life of crime and violence that doomed the rest of the gang. This act of love and redemption allows John to survive the events of RDR2, but his past continues to haunt him. In RDR1, John's story reaches its heartbreaking conclusion. Federal agents track him down and force him to hunt down the remaining members of the old gang, including Dutch. After doing their dirty work, the government betrays him, sending soldiers to his ranch to wipe out any loose ends. In the game's final moments, John sends Abigail and Jack to safety before stepping out to face dozens of armed soldiers alone. He is gunned down in a hail of bullets, sacrificing himself to protect his family. John's downfall is devastating because it shows that, no matter how hard he tried, he could never truly escape his past. His life and death are a testament to the harsh truth of the world he lived in. Redemption always comes with a price. 6. Lenny Summers, a bright future cut short. Lenny Summers represents the hope for a new generation within the gang. Young, intelligent, and fearless, Lenny has ambitions beyond the life of an outlaw. He speaks often about wanting to see the world and create a better future for himself. He also shares some of the game's most lighthearted and joyful moments, including the unforgettable drunken bar scene with Arthur and Valentine. Lenny's youthful energy and optimism make him one of the most beloved characters among the gang and the players. Sadly, Lenny's life is cut tragically short during the Saint Denis bank heist. As the gang scrambles to escape, Lenny is shot dead by lawmen while climbing a rooftop. His death happens suddenly and without warning, leaving Arthur and the others in shock. One moment he's fighting for his life, and the next, he's gone. Lenny's downfall is especially painful because he represents the future that the gang will never have. Unlike some of the older members who are set in their ways, Lenny had the potential to leave the outlaw life behind and make something of himself. His death shows how Dutch's reckless leadership destroys not just the old generation of outlaws, but also the younger members who believed in his vision. Lenny's death is the beginning of a cascade of losses that signal the gang's inevitable collapse. If you watched up to this point, it means you really like the video. If you want to, you can subscribe. It would really mean a lot. Molly O'Shea, killed for nothing. Molly O'Shea, Dutch's lover, experiences one of the most unjust and misunderstood downfalls in the story. At first, Molly is proud to be with Dutch, seeing him as a powerful and inspiring leader. However, as Dutch becomes more obsessed with his plans and increasingly distant, Molly feels neglected and abandoned. Her bitterness grows as Dutch spends more time with the gang, and especially with Micha, leaving her feeling useless and forgotten. Eventually, Molly reaches a breaking point. During a drunken outburst at camp, she claims to have betrayed the gang by informing the Pinkertons of their plans. She says this out of anger and desperation, wanting to hurt Dutch and get his attention. Before anyone can determine whether she's telling the truth, Miss Grimshaw executes Molly on the spot in front of everyone. It is strongly implied that Molly was innocent and that her confession was nothing more than a drunken lie. The real traitor was Micha all along, but Dutch refuses to see it. Molly's death is a clear sign of how paranoid and broken the gang has become. Loyalty no longer matters, and fear rules the camp. Molly's downfall is particularly tragic because she dies unloved, untrusted, and misunderstood, a victim of Dutch's coldness and the gang's collapsing unity. 8. Sean Macguire, the gang's first major loss. Sean Macguire is one of the gang's most colorful and entertaining members. His humor, charm, and fearless attitude bring life to the camp, and his presence in the early chapters gives players a sense of warmth and camaraderie. Sean's playful banter with Arthur and the others makes him feel like a little brother to the gang, someone full of life and potential. That's what makes his death so shocking and brutal. During what seems like a safe return from a routine job, the gang is ambushed by the Greys in Rhodes. Without any warning, Sean is shot in the head and killed instantly. The moment is sudden and devastating, leaving the gang stunned and the player in disbelief. Sean's downfall is important because it marks a turning point in the story. Up until this point, the gang feels relatively safe despite their outlaw lifestyle. Sean's death shatters that illusion, showing that Dutch's plans are falling apart and that anyone can die at any moment. It foreshadows the many losses to come and signals that the gang's dream is already crumbling.